What's crack-a-lackin'? Steven, aka the Visualizer. Thanks for checking out the video. It's another one in my journey series. This is part 20, and it's gonna talk about the first leg of my trip out west, how that came about and what kind of stuff happened there. Again, if you're not familiar with my journey series, it's basically a testimony of my thoughts, feelings, and reflections on my journey before and through my spiritual awakening that happened in August of last year, 2023. Still ongoing. So I was just guided to make these videos and tell people kind of the stuff I've been going through, because the people that I've shared stuff privately have mentioned that they think that this needs to be out there. It's gonna be a pretty quick episode, really leading up to some crazy stuff in the next two. So I hope you stay tuned. So last episode I talked about how I moved out of my apartment without any place to go. Was living out of my Nissan Murano truck, sleeping there at night and working out of my storage unit for a couple weeks. And then I just didn't see, I was hoping things would happen in my favor and nothing really would. And I just really started questioning my spirit guides and praying, meditating, and looking for answers. And finally I got an answer with a bunch of synchronicities that basically said, you need to go travel to Oregon. At the time I didn't have any money. Miraculously, I talked about in the last episode how I found the money to do this. And the money came through, I booked the trip. And as all these things are, coincidences, which aren't actually a thing, it's just divine circumstances and timing. I actually had another trip out west booked for around the same time. I had booked a trip with my healing academy. They do retreats, and one of them was an ayahuasca retreat, and I had booked that many months ago. It was probably in December, and I'd almost forgotten about it. And the timing matched up with exactly when I was asked to go to the West Coast, specifically to Oregon. Mount Shasta is in California. So obviously I got the guidance. It was very vague. It was like, go to Oregon. I'm like, okay, like, where the fuck do I go in Oregon? What do I do? How long am I supposed to be there? So I asked a bunch of questions, and I was told, you have all the answers you need. And I was like, all right. And if I had $1 for every time I heard that response from my spirit guides or had people channel my spirits, I would literally be a millionaire by now, because it's all they ever fucking say to me. So I started thinking, and the signs and synchronicities that came up had to do with the Oregon Trail. So I started looking into that more deeply. And there is actually a museum in Oregon City that commemorates the end of the Oregon Trail. And I asked them, I was like, okay, is that where I'm supposed to go? And they were like, yes. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay, we can do that. You know, that at least gives me a point. And I've been given places to go in the past by my spirit guides, and it's always led to some like breadcrumb where I met someone that like dropped some really profound knowledge on me that like helped me move to the next part of my path. So that's what I was expecting at this point. And then the other question was like, okay, go to Oregon, go to Oregon City and this museum, and then how long am I supposed to stay out in Oregon? Because the initial kind of idea that came from my friend who originally pitched it, she was like, you need to move there permanently. Like, the energy is going to be way better for you. She studies in something called astrocartography, which I had gotten a little bit into, but I had some other people, friends that are well-versed in the area, kind of decode my astrocartography chart. Astrocartography is basically uses your astrology information, you know, your birth sign and all, to calculate kind of like where in the world the energy is most aligned with what you're trying to do. And at the time I was really focused on making a new beginning, you know, finding a partner and also finding an opportunity for a new career. And that aligns perfectly with kind of basically the West Coast of the US, which is what my chart said. So that made more sense. I'll go, okay, this is all coming together now. Like, you know, I've been working really hard, you know, trying to find this partner for a while. And, you know, I quit my job, and I've been really looking to apply myself with a new career. That's something that can, you know, I can feel more passionate about and help more people. So I was like, okay. And then they hit me with the bombshell. They were like, oh yeah, you have to stay out in the West Coast for 30 days. And I was like, 30 fucking days? Okay, that's a long ass time to like make a trip. better than permanent, I guess, because that would have been like a super leap of faith. Like, okay, yeah, you're never coming back. Because, you know, I still have people close to me here in the Northeast that, you know, not quite ready to leave yet. So I got that information and I'm like, okay, you know, and the money that I got back to be able to schedule the flights and everything was not enough to sustain me for 30 days. And I knew that. And I was like, no, fuck it. I'm going to go anyway. We're just going to take this leap and shit will work out exactly how it has to work out. And that's really a cornerstone of walking in faith and spirituality and just trusting in that the divine and the universe will come through for you. So got on the plane to Oregon at the end of April, and it was a long flight. It's out to the West Coast. There was actually a layover, but I brought a book that I had bought off of recommendation from someone from the last retreat that I went to. I went to a retreat in Massachusetts in November of 2023 at the Kripalu Yoga Center, and someone was like, you should read this book, and they were really adamant. There's a book called The Shack. It was like a bestseller, and they made a movie out of it. I'd never seen the movie. And I bought the book like as soon as I got back from the retreat, because this person was like, please read it. You know, you have to read it. And my stubborn ass never got around to reading it. I read a whole bunch of other stuff in the meantime, but it just felt like a perfect time to, you know, get some reading. It was a kind of fiction book. And I had read a lot of kind of spirituality, self-help things. So I was like, let me just read something light. And, you know, this lady who recommended it was very adamant. So I pulled it out of my storage locker, took it on the plane. So I'm flying to Oregon. I crack open the book. And in the first chapter of the book, the foreword, it sets up the story of the shack. That's what the book is called. And it talks about the main character who actually left his home in Mississippi and moved out to Oregon to start a new beginning. And I'm like, if I needed another sign that this is the right way to go. So I land in Oregon. I got a cheap hotel, and I also booked a car because I really needed to get to Oregon City, and that's really not walkable from Portland. So I go to the Oregon Trail Museum. Again, I've been through this before, as I mentioned. I've been to different places, and I know, like, usually you just make connections with people. So that's what I was trying to do. The people that work there, you know, I like picked their brain on stuff, and it was just really like open to learning more about the Oregon Trail, and did all that, and, you know, watched a bunch of presentations, walked through and seen all the stuff, and learned pretty much everything I needed to learn about it. And it's pretty depressing shit if you're not familiar with it. People that, you know, wanted, and again, the parallels are crazy, they wanted to make a new beginning back in, I guess this was like, I don't remember the time, 1600s or 1800s, something like that. I think 1800s. And they just basically uprooted their families from Midwest mostly, or East Coast, and traveled on this dangerous ass route with wagons and everything that they had. And they did this in kind of like caravans, and it was just an uncharted territory that not many people had going on, and there was a lot of danger and uncertainty, and a lot of people didn't make it, and it was just yeah, pretty fucked up ass situation. But a lot of people did, and they kind of were able to acquire land, some through kind of nefarious means where they displaced a lot of the indigenous people that lived out there, but people kind of, you know, made new beginnings and acquired a lot of land to do farming on and stuff. So it was just another parallel, because again, I was looking for my new beginning. It's kind of what was promised to me kind of out west. So I talked to everybody I could at the Oregon Trail Museum and really left there kind of confused. I was like, okay, I didn't really get any breadcrumbs. That was the first time that I've ever been led anywhere. And I was like, all right, well, you know, maybe something else will happen on the trip or whatever. So went back to, you know, home base at the hotel, and had a little bit of money left, and I decided, like, fuck it, like, we're gonna live it up. I'm gonna do some sightseeing and shit. So I went and did Portland Japanese Garden, which is awesome. Did some hiking in a national park while I still had the car and I could go. I went out to Lake Oswego, saw some sights, and then yeah, money dried up pretty quick. All these crazy unexpected expenses came through and just drained my bank account, and I had like barely anything left, and I had like 3 weeks to survive. So I was like, all right, I mean, will work out. I'll have faith. And yeah, so I had to keep busy for like another half a week before my Mount Shasta trip, which I did have everything booked for. And I was really looking forward to this because the people from my healing academy who had been on these ayahuasca retreats before just had told me about how transformative they were and how just amazing things started happening in their lives just after going on the retreat and just kind of giving yourself and surrendering fully to what you could learn from that. So again, I'm looking for new beginnings and, you know, perfect timing. So I did a lot of like urban hiking in Portland, and really the one thing that stuck out to me about the city, because I was, you know, I had expected it was going to be more scenic with all the trees and shit, but the amount of homeless people out there was striking. And that was, again, another parallel to what I had been through. I had, you know, been helping out the homeless for a few months, was homeless myself before I left for Oregon. And I get out here and I see like, it's pretty bad. There's like RVs on the side of a lot of roads and a lot of the part of the city where people are just living out of there because they have nowhere to go. Once you start getting into like out in the middle of nowhere, there's people with like tents like all over right off the side of the road. Like every underpass, there are people like living under there just for like the shelter. It's rough out there. It's the roughest place I've ever seen as far as homeless. So there's nothing I could really do for anybody out there because I didn't have any kind of funds or whatever, and I didn't really have much of an opportunity to speak to anybody. You know, people were pretty like isolated and not very friendly out in Portland, if you will. So yeah, I just kind of like did my thing, tried to keep busy and try to be productive and just look for signs, and really not a lot happened. And I was like, okay, I just chalked it up to, okay, this was just an ends to the means to get me to Mount Shasta, and that retreat was going to be where the real breakthroughs happen. So crazy stories upcoming about that. So I'm going to cut it off there. So that's the first part of 3 of my West Coast trip, and I'll talk about my Mount Shasta retreat in pretty great detail in the next video. So thanks for rocking with me. Peace, love, and light.